So in this section, I want to tell you about a really fascinating study that looks at weight stigma. And so one of the questions that's come up in the literature, and it shocks me every time that I talk about this, that people wonder this, but the question is that can stigma ever be good, right? So the idea here is that, with smoking campaigns, anti-smoking campaigns, many people believe that the reason that that's been so effective is that basically we've stigmatized people into not smoking, right? We make that a shameful thing to do. It's it's gross, it's dirty, and here's some examples of things that try to highlight that, right? That this is a voluntary thing to do, smoking, and it's shameful. We should scorn that, and this is somebody being shamed for smoking. I'm 18, my clothes stink, and it sticks to you, right? And so this is the idea is that maybe this does work, right? With smoking, maybe it seems to have worked, right? People have smoked. Fewer people smoke over time now, and stigma has gone up over time. So maybe those two things are related, right? We've seen that smoking rates have gone down in the U.S. and Canada. At the same time, people's attitudes towards smoking have become more negative, right? We know more about why this is bad, and so maybe stigma could be a good thing. Maybe we can, shame people into changing their behavior. And so based on this model, some people have been interested in applying this to weight and wondering, maybe, we should shame people, right? Isn't the point that if people tell you this is a bad thing and make you feel bad about it, then you'll change your behavior? So personally, of course, I don't endorse this, but I want to show you some research more on why this is really an ineffective way to go. And so, first of all, it's not clear from evidence that shame or stigma is what has led people to smoke less. If anything, one of the strongest predictors of that has been just making it more difficult for people to smoke. There's fewer spaces where you're able to do that now, and that makes it harder for people to do it, and that is one thing that does help people not to do it. And also just certainly over time we've learned more and more about the long-lasting negative health effects of this, and that's also shifted public opinion. Secondly, even let's say we assume that is why people are less likely to smoke now, is because of stigma and shame. So then the question is, can you apply this to other public health issues like obesity, right? And here's an example of an actual ad that tries to do that, right? Is saying that this is these French fries are just like cigarettes, right? It's if you don't eat these, then you won't be overweight, and these bad things won't happen to you, right? They're really trying to link these things, right? And so the question is, does this work? Is there any evidence on this? And so just for another example, right, of these very stigmatizing campaigns, right, there's just another one of these where they're really shaming these kids, right? They're trying to show that this is a terrible thing. It's terrible to be overweight, and this is a stigmatized identity, and therefore you should try not to be. And so there's this really interesting study. This was actually one that was done by my roommate in graduate school, Dr. Jeff Hunger now, and he is now a leader in research on weight stigma, and what he, reading all this literature on, maybe we should try stigmatizing people, was like, that's a terrible idea, and I'd like to show you with evidence why that's a terrible idea. And so in this study, what they did was, presumably it was a study on social policies in the news, and so they brought participants into the lab, and they read these New York Times articles. They weren't real New York Times articles, but they were ones that were fabricated to look like them, and they were either about lose weight or lose your job, or about quitting smoking and losing your job. And importantly, all the participants in this study were overweight women who didn't smoke. And so that means that the losing weight to lose your job, that was a self-relevant threat, right? That was about them and being overweight, so this is a stigmatizing thing to read. Whereas the quit smoking or lose your job, that wasn't relevant to them, right? So certainly that stigmatizes smokers, but these women were not smokers, so it wasn't stigmatizing to them, but it was equally negative, right? So the articles were something like this, right? They look like a New York Times article, and it says lose weight or lose your job. People who are overweight are being denied jobs, or in some cases fired. Overweight employees may be bad for the company's image. Those who are obese are weak-willed and too unattractive to interact with customers, right? So really stigmatizing. They really went heavy-handed with this. Or in the other one, it said, basically the same thing, but quit smoking or lose your job. People who smoke are being denied jobs and in some cases fired. Smokers could be bad for the company's image. Smokers are weak-willed, shouldn't interact with customers. So they did that. They read those, and then afterward, it's about social policies in the news. Then next they were asked to, watch some funny videos and some different news stories and rate them. And just while they were doing that, there was some snacks that were provided. So there were just bowls of M&Ms and Skittles and goldfish that were put out in the room. And presumably these were not part of the study. They were just snacks that were offered. But really what they were interested in is how much of these snacks did people eat. And so they knew how many M&Ms, Skittles, and goldfish were in each bowl beforehand, so you could know how many of each people ate. I personally love this study because of research ethics. Once you put those bowls out for participants, you can't reuse any of the Skittles or M&Ms or goldfish that they didn't eat, but you can eat them. And so my roommate would bring home or bring to my lab all of these snacks that were not eaten, Skittles and things that participants had eaten out of the bowl but not actually eaten them, and I would get to eat those. So this is how I survived graduate school. But anyway, the point is that they could see then how much you ate afterward. And so the question is, right, if you buy the argument that if you make people ashamed of something about themselves, then they'll change that behavior, then you would expect that women who read the article about lose weight or lose your job would eat less. But in fact, that's not what they found, and so this actually backfired. So what we're going to look at here is first we're going to divide this between women who perceive themselves as being high perceived weight, so being overweight, versus low weight, and that changes it. And so for people who were not overweight, they ate a bit more in the control condition than in the weight stigma condition. This wasn't a significant difference, but it was. But really what we're interested in is what happened for these women who were overweight and perceived themselves to be overweight. In this condition, the weight stigma threat, they ate significantly more calories than they did in the control condition, right? And so they ate a lot more then. And so the idea here is that this was a threatening message, right? And so this actually backfired, right? Rather than this shaming message leading them to change that behavior, it makes people feel bad about yourself. And when you feel bad about yourself, you might be more likely to eat. There's a few different mechanisms by which this might occur. Research is still sort of out on whether it's you're eating more because of the stress of that, because of the lack of self-regulation. I think what's more important is just that this happens and that this doesn't work the way that people expect. And so there's really clear evidence from this and from studies that have followed since that stigma is not a way to get people to change their behavior. It will backfire. And so that's a great study on that. Very interesting, very well-designed, and also fun for those around who get to eat snacks. And so, these stigmatizing health campaigns have been shown to be related to lower health intentions rather than stronger health intentions. They undermine people's self-efficacy, right? You might be feeling like you're doing better and you are losing weight, or you've been eating healthy, and then everyone turns it back to the number of pounds on your body. And that's really undermining of the fact that you feel better and you're doing well. And also, so these have been shown to be no more motivating than non-stigmatizing campaigns. So they're they don't help, and the stress caused by these campaigns can actually backfire and promote more weight gain, right? So people in that study were eating more, but also we're going to learn in our next lecture that when we are stressed, we also hold on to calories more and are more likely to gain weight. So stressing people out is not a good way to promote weight loss, ever. So there you have it. We should really not be stigmatizing people. I hope I didn't need to tell you this, but apparently researchers need to be told this because we continue to pursue these types of shaming interventions, as well as we need to, advertising and public health campaigns need to be told this, because we do see a lot of campaigns based around stigmatizing different health behaviors. So really the only good kind of stigma, here's my dad joke for the day, is the stigma in the flower, which is an important part for pollination and creating more flowers. So that's the only good type of stigma. So I'm going to end this section here, and then we'll pick up later with sleep.